The island of Sodor is a place where Thomas calls home. He happily runs his branch lines with his two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. But it wasn't always this way. You see, long ago, before Thomas went to Sodor, he worked on the mainland with his twin sister, Tracy. Tracy was like Thomas. She was very cheeky, but also very kind and hard-working. In 1915, when Thomas left to work on Sodor, Tracy thought Thomas would eventually come back, but he never did. Over time, Tracy began to believe that Thomas had simply forgotten about her and valued his new home over her. Years later, during the era of dieselization, Tracy was parked in a cold siding inside a smelter's yard, waiting to be scrapped. As the workmen approached with their torches, Tracy made one final vow to herself.
Mark my words, Thomas will pay for forgetting me.
Thomas was happily puffing down his branch line. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the clear spring weather was perfect.
Man, I sure do love springtime. The weather is so nice and everything looks beautiful, especially on my branch line. Ooh, look at that butterfly.
As Thomas puffed into Elsbridge, James was waiting impatiently at the platform with his passenger train.
There you are. I feel like I've been waiting here for ages.
Oh, sort of, James. I'm actually right on time.
How about maybe being a few minutes earlier next time? I don't like you waiting, and you'd know that for a fact.
There's a speed limit on my branch line, you know. You try going for a run and just see how many stops you have to make.
I'd rather not.
James chuffed out of the station, leaving Thomas in a bitter mood.
Ugh, that James.
Later that evening, Thomas backed into his shed at Tidmouth Yard, where Percy was already parked. He looked exhausted.
Long day of work, Percy.
You have no idea, Thomas. It was back and forth all day long.
But before Thomas could say another word, Percy had drifted off to sleep. So he decided to also get some rest. However, when Thomas awoke the following morning, he could tell something was off. The entire yard was empty, and Percy was nowhere to be seen. A thick layer of fog clouded everything, making it hard for him to see. But to make matters worse, he felt as if he was being watched.
Hello? Percy? Toby? Anyone?
But Thomas' calls were quickly met with silence. His driver and firemen weren't there, so he couldn't steam away to search around.
Hello? Anybody?
Thomas nearly jumped when he heard the sound of an engine slowly approaching. feeling that someone was watching him grew stronger as the distance traveling got louder and louder.
Who's there? Show yourself.
Just then, Thomas heard a ghostly yet familiar voice from seemingly nowhere.
Thomas,
Who's there?
did you really forget me?
That voice. I recognize your voice. It belonged to...
A green tank engine materialized in front of Thomas. She wore an angry expression and her eyes were completely wide. But the engine was all too familiar to Thomas.
Tracy?
You forgot about me, Thomas. You said you'd be back in a few days, and those days turned into months, then years.
That's not...
You said it yourself, Thomas. We'd stick together till the very end. And I ended up getting scrapped alone while you were off on your precious little branch line.
Tracy, please. You have to listen to me.
No! You left me to suffer. And now, I'll make sure you feel the same amount of pain!
Just then, Thomas snapped awake. A wave of relief washed over as he let out a long sigh. It was still dark out. Percy, who had been sleeping, was awoken by the sound, looking over with a groggy voice, barely above a whisper.
Thomas, what's wrong? It's like 3 a.m. right now.
Sorry. Just a nightmare.
Percy fell quietly back to sleep, but Thomas remained awake the rest of the night. The next morning, Thomas was rather tired after the previous night. He slowly made his way up to Elsbridge Station, where James was waiting. He noticed Thomas's lack of energy.
You taking forever to get here is one thing, but being tired too? That's just completely unacceptable.
Sorry, James. I had a nightmare, and I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. But it felt so real.
Pah! Enlighten me then. What could you have dreamt about that had you up all night,
There was a long pause before Thomas spoke again.
James, does your past ever come back to haunt you?
James began to nervously laugh, looking around frantically.
What? Nah, it couldn't. I've moved, ever since.
Since what? James? James!
Oh, wait, ever since I was new.
Later that day, Thomas was shunting in the coal yard, when just for a split second, he saw Tracy again behind a row of trucks, watching him before vanishing behind them.
Just my imagination. Just my imagination. Yeah, it's only a dream.
That night, Thomas could hardly fall asleep. He was still on edge about the nightmare and was afraid to go to sleep. He looked up at the night sky, whispering to himself.
Hi, Tracy. Why are you doing this?
The next morning, Percy had just woken up and was in good spirits.
Good morning, Thomas. I'll be taking the nightly mail train, so I won't be here tonight. I believe I heard the yard manager say that James will be joining you, though.
Oh, thank goodness. For a second there, I thought I'd be alone tonight.
What do you mean? You've never had issues sleeping alone. Is there something going? You've been acting strange ever since yesterday morning.
Thomas just quietly stared down at these buffers.
I'm not even sure at this point, Percy. I wish I knew.
He quietly puffed away to fetch Annie and Clarabelle, not saying another word. As Thomas collected his coaches, he began to think to himself.
What have I done to deserve this? I never hurt her, so why would she want revenge?
He had shunted Annie and Clarabelle into place at Knapford and was waiting for the all clear from the guard. But as he waited, he felt the eyes of Tracy watching him from somewhere.
Please just leave me alone. I don't like this.
Tracy's voice then appeared in Thomas's mind.
You have until nightfall to confess. If not, I'll see to it that you're scrapped just like I was.
Thomas quickly sped out of the station.
No, you won't.
Thomas? Who are you speaking to?
When Thomas arrived at Elsbridge, he let out a long sigh. He looked over to James, who was looking back at him with a suspicious look.
This is getting ridiculous. Thomas, I don't like seeing others in despair, so just come clean and tell me what's going on already.
Thomas took a deep breath and began to tell James everything, from how he left Tracy at the mainland, and how she recently began to haunt him. By the end of it, James was shuddering in fear, surprised to hear such an awful story.
I'm unsure what to do, James. And I know you also have issues with dealing with your past, but please help me out here. If there's anyone who knows about confronting the mistakes of the past, it's you.
You've been silent ever since, Thomas. It's time you quit cowering and face her head on. Express your true feelings and defend yourself. Once your point is made clear, she'll finally understand and will stop haunting you.
As James left the station, Thomas thought hard on what he had just said.
Express my feelings. Right. That's what I'll do. I'll show Tracy how I really feel.
Later that evening, James and Thomas were at the yard's sheds. They sat in silence for a bit before Thomas broke the silence.
You sure this'll work?
How do you think I've stayed myself for so long?
Fair enough.
As Thomas slowly drifted off, he found himself back in the foggy shed. The yards were empty once again. Tracy was waiting for him. She stood right in front of Thomas, the cold glare meeting Thomas's nervous gaze.
You didn't confess, Thomas. You know what that means. Say goodbye to all your friends.
Tracy slowly began to roll forward. But as she did, Thomas thought about his friends. Percy, Edward, Toby, Gordon, and James. A flame determination sparked in Thomas as his ghostly sibling rolled closer and closer.
No!
What?
You really think I forgot about you? That I just casted you aside like some dull memory?
Tracy was caught off guard, rolling back in shock.
Ever since the day that I left, I always thought about you and how much I was going to miss you. When I first met my friends, their kindness and hospitality reminded me of you. Every truck that I shunt, every coach that I pull, every conversation I have with my friends, I think of you. You're the reason why I wake up every morning and decide to keep things going. Because you never gave up on your work, and you never gave up on me. Sure, I may have been clumsy, inexperienced, clueless, and forgetful back then, but you were always there to pick me back up and teach me something new.
All Tracy could do was silently look at Thomas with a guilty expression.
Tracy, you may be gone now, but you'll always be here, in my heart, and through every one of my friends. I'll never forget the mark that you left on me. I promise.
Just then, eyes formed where there once weren't, and Tracy smiled. The once frightful feeling that was building up in Thomas dissipated instantly as he too smiled back.
Thank you for remembering me.
How could I not?
I can finally rest easy now. Goodbye, Thomas.
Goodbye, Tracy.
With one final goodbye whistle, Tracy vanished in front of Thomas. Just then, Thomas woke up, a warm smile on his face, as he looked up at the rising morning sun.
I'll miss you, sis.
A smile formed on James, who was sleeping next to him. He opened his eyes and looked over at Thomas.
I guess it worked then. It's like I said, Thomas, confront your past.
As Thomas continued his work on Sodor, he was able to work happily, knowing that Tracy's spirit was happily watching over him.
That's my brother, alright.
One afternoon, Thomas was collecting his coaches from the Knapford yard.
Hello, you two. Today's gonna be amazing.
But as he pulled away, he was unaware that an engine was watching him from the nearby shed as they slowly rolled out.
Why must you always be the center of it all, Thomas? I really didn't want you to be involved, but I guess I have no choice. You all forgot what you did to me. But that all changes now.